record my Germany class last time, and God knows my troubles with that. But I'm go ahead and start recording. I got my chat open, and now we're gonna head over to Switzerland. All right. Thanks everybody for being here always. And I think kind of a cool class to be attending here, but thank you very much. This is cool. So, we're right here by Lake Geneva or Lake Le Mans. It's one of the largest bodies of fresh water in Western Europe, but where a lot of these vineyards are located. And when we get over to it, it's in the Vaud region, and specifically in this area called Le Valle. But they talked about some of the terrace hillsides and how they're a little more difficult to work. And a lot of times we're at a relatively high elevation. But when you're visiting these areas, you'll probably be staying in a hotel like right along here. And then you have the mountains all along in the background. And then you just have this huge body of water that's just super, super pretty. Had a mongoose a few months back. Yeah, we're going to get into that too in a second. But just super pretty, super gorgeous. Doesn't feel like a large area, and it's not, rather remote, but just obviously breathtakingly pretty. You want to sit by the water, and we're gonna get to it too. But I was just, oh yeah, we're right by Lake Geneva. But when you head over even into east of where our first picture started, and you're in Valle, probably the most celebrated site, if I had to say. It's everything is based right along the Rhone River. It's the northernmost reaches of the Rhone River. So if you love your Rhone wines, where does it finally come to an end, or maybe even starting point? But is in Valais of Switzerland. So here we are, adventures in the Alps. The three main areas that we're visiting tonight: Switzerland, Savoie, and then Val d'Aosta. As we cover these areas, just touch a little bit on the geography and climate as always, because it's reflective in the wines and their styles, as this is agriculture, right? Why would something would be lighter versus slightly fuller, and how these grapes are grown. Looking at the unique varieties from these areas, some maybe less familiar than others, which could be a cool thing to always come across, trying these unique grapes. It's not just Pinot Noir, although there's a lot of it. It's actually the most planted red in all of Switzerland, and I think actually most planted grape overall. So it could actually be an alternative for some of our more familiar options. And then, yeah, I kept some of the producers that we visited, and then I'm highlighting a couple on our way. If it'd be like Savoie and Val d'Aosta too, so we have some labels to look at. This is actually in Ticino. It's on the eastern part of Switzerland, but I thought, well, this looks summery almost. I was like, it's winter, so I didn't mind seeing this and then reminding it, yeah, it's rather continental still, and that you can see some snowfall. But this is an area on the eastern part. Just remember Ticino, Ticino, because when we pull up a map, which is next, right over here, this is our Italian-speaking canton. Where it's known for its red varietals, Merlot. So we're just right on the northern border of Italy over here. But slow myself down and look at our bullet points. Small, a very mountainous country. I have another map next to that that kind of highlights the Alps and where they're located right after this. But in many areas, winemaking goes back about 2,000 years, about the time of Rome, or the Romans, when they expanded through southern parts of Italy, reaching into the north, and eventually getting up through northern parts of France and in Germany. So sharing a similar shared time in history, about 2,000 years ago. Some evidence of this is that they have a ceramic bottle that was dated back to the 2nd century BC that was found in this Celtic tomb in Valle. And then that's this region right over here. Where we started from, our first picture was in Le Valle. This is in Le Vaud. Okay, these are our French-speaking cantons, but they found a tomb with a ceramic bottle that had contained wine located over here that goes about 2,000 years old. And then some of the storytelling, or again, history, is that Celtic people were also written about as being offering wine to the dead, so that they are probably also consuming amongst themselves too. And then we see the appearance of Roman amphora in the area about a century after that. Viticulture mainly driven by monasteries during the Middle Ages. We're not too far away from Burgundy, where we had these large monastic orders. So that, again, just extending just east of where we're at, and then even above Germany, you saw the influence of the church, even possessing some of the largest vineyard holdings in the entire Middle Ages. So what kind of kept things going for hundreds and hundreds of years. But when we're looking at the size, kind of taking a little chip out of the history and geography and climate within this slide, pretty small. It's kind of wild. Only 1/10 the size of all of California. I believe when we flew in, I thought we came in through the north. I didn't double check that, and I think we actually flew into like Zurich, and then we drove down for the afternoon, or we might have even taken a train. We might fly in the north and then head down south, but not a huge area. And then again, where the Alps account for 60% of the surface area, a lot of that is located over here, even on the western parts. And you can look at this too, just like where most of the wine growing regions, there's kind of scattered on the outside perimeters, even where it's a little bit more mellow in its terrain, where viticulture can even prosper. But because of these high elevations, most vineyards lie at a certain altitude, very little actually below 400 meters. And then I always throw that out there if you attend our classes, but like Burgundy, kind of just a little bit northwest of here. When you're talking about Grand Crus, we're usually at like 250, 275. So these are already starting up higher than some of our more celebrated sites in France. And then overall, relatively cool, but it can vary. In the summertime in Valle, you can still get hot afternoon temperatures spiking above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Ticino over here, just used to that. And I'm always like, oh, shoot, forgive me if it's Ticino, but I believe it's Ticino. I didn't double check that. It's just not an area that we see a lot of. They can have high levels of rainfall kind of combined with high temperatures also during the days. But then this is our more of a geography based map where we can see all these Alps, where we get to be at high elevation, kind of scattered over here on the southern sides. Valle kind of along within there. But what allows viticulture to survive here or grow, grapes to grow, is just, again, you can, now this is cool where you can see the Rhone River and then where it extends and runs right through the area down below. So where we're really spending most of our time, well, here, that's kind of on my next slide, is again down here, Valle, Vaud. This is another French-speaking canton, Neuchâtel, right along this lake over here. But most of what's happening is down over here. I would say Ticino is next to that as far as influence. And then Geneve, can't forget about that. I skipped right past that, but that would be like number 3 in level of production. And then kind of a backup to France, Germany, Austria, Italy. So these many different regions, they talk about, even within these areas, nearly 26 autonomous cantons, and then each having their own official language. So again, on the west, Valle, Vaud, Geneva, Neuchâtel, all French speaking. And the eastern parts over here, we have up to like 17 German speaking cantons. And then in the south is our Ticino, and right near the Lombardy border. Don't forget Merlot. That would be the thing to remember over here, but where you'd be speaking Italian. And then just a way to quickly summarize it, if there's anything we need to remember about Switzerland, is this grape right here, and it's Chasselas. This is totally like if you need a Chablis alternative, this is what you're looking for right here. It's just crisp, it's bright, it's dry. Chardonnay sometimes described as being neutral in its expression. It's where it's typically in this apple, pear, tree fruit category, and that meaning like as opposed to like Sauvignon Blanc, that's very herbaceous or like very citrus driven with like this grapefruit and like jalapeno aromatics, or like muscat, which is very floral. This doesn't really have any of that, so why it's more reflective of the environment in which it's grown and possibly how it's made. But these are wines that rarely ever see oak in a richer styles. And one actually thing that's kind of unique is that a lot of people practice, just because there's a few people that are into wine in this crowd, is that malolactic is more is a pretty common practice in this area, similar to even Chablis, where after the wine, the juice is fermented into wine, that second part, malolactic, just converting tart green malic acids into soft creamy lactic acid. So for a region that's relatively cold, producing these bright crisp wines, one way that they can soften it out and give a light creaminess to it is allowing for this process of malolactic. And not all white wines do that. I actually we when I was been able to go to Savoie twice, and lucky me, and seriously. But on the second visit, we went into the northern parts of Savoie, right across the border of Lake Geneva, and we met with this one producer that was blocking all of their malolactic, and it was unique because he's the only producer in that area to do so. So he's kind of going against the grain. So the wines are a little bit sharper. They were a little bit more linear than what was more commonly seen, and that was because of the winemaking. But Chasselas, this is your crisp, dry white that you usually want after a day of skiing when you're cozied up by the fire. And then some are other similar varietals, just reflective of even nearby regions. Mueller Thurgau. Hey, check this out, you guys, because if you've gone to a Germany class, right, one of the most highly planted crossings throughout the 1900s, where did it all come from? Up here, Thurgau. This is where this varietal is first developed, Mueller Thurgau. It's slightly more aromatic. This one's a little bit floral. If it's not in Germany, right across over here, even though this is Lombardy, you might have like Alto Adige, where Mueller Thurgau is also found. Chardonnay, why? Because it's right over here in Burgundy and even like the Jura and Savoie found over here. And then things like Sylvaner, low locally as Johannesburg. So if you ever come across Johannesburg, you can just know that it's Sylvaner. Again, very popular in like Alto Adige, as is in Germany. You also, I'll stop there. We see Hermitage with, it's like, sounds like Hermitage, but it's without the H. That's Marsan, another white just to throw in there. Some indigenous white varietals, sticking on this, is a mean of the region Vautroise, where they make some wonderful sweet wines coming from the Valle. And then Petit Arvine too, which we're going to revisit once we get to Val d'Aosta. It's kind of almost Chenin-like, where it's a little nutty, it's a little golden, it's a little more textured, but still really bright and dry, almost electric in its acidity. It almost wakes you up that way, but it's a little more textured and it's a little bit nuttier with slight oxidative characters to it sometimes. And then for your red grapes, well, again, we're still relatively cool. Again, we're not in Paso Robles, California, so still better for lighter style of reds, with which can grow successfully and ripen quite fairly. Besides Pinot Noir is one of the most, you have some Gamay, and then Merlot would be like third along those lines as far as the most common, but we're going to get into some other more unique varietals. And then why don't we see it? Because they don't really need to export it. They're not, they're doing just fine economically, just drinking most things at home. Most of what is exported goes up to Germany, and I've heard a higher percentage of this is actually consumed locally, where I've heard numbers as far as like only 2% of all wines were actually exported. So very, very little. So we're zooming in now on our French cantons, our speaking regions, right? So here, yeah, I've heard 2% too. It's really, really low. I think that's even like a Wikipedia reference or wine searcher reference or something like that. Valle and the Vaud. Okay, so within Valle, I like this map here too. You can see where most of the vineyards are. They have a number of major crus or villages, kind of like Fouilly, Sayon, Latron, Chamoisson, Vitroise. This is where our famous Amine de Vitroise, where they make late harvest sweet wines from. going all the way. I won't maybe say them all. Well, maybe I am. Conti, Sion, Saint Leonard, Sierre, moving east. Valle, right along the Rhone River. We could imagine the Rhone River being right here. As we move over towards Lake Geneva, this is where we have the Vaud, okay? Going all the way down into the southwestern tip where we see the last major area, not marked here on the map, but by the town Geneva, by Lake Geneva. And within the Vaud, we have these major areas, and they sound French. You know, when we're quizzing each other, sometimes I forget these if I haven't looked at it for a while, but like, oh, just remember they sound French, like La Côte, like La Slope. And this is Laveau, again, where we first started, probably the most prized area because they blow it up over here on the north, on our map up above. And then when they talk about top vineyard sites, Grand Crus, they have two that are supposedly officially recognized, that being Désolé and then Calaman. And remember this, you guys, Désolé, Calaman, and even a Pes. I have pictures in a minute, but Laval, there are two Grand Crus, Désolé and Calaman, pretty much the main area to remember from the Vaud. Chablais, again, remember, sounds French, just finishing out the eastern part. And then Vaud. And then when we get up to Lake Nucatel, pretty small in production. I mean, there's only like 600 hectares grown up here. So really, really small. I mean, it's like the village of Gevrey-Chambertin in Burgundy is 400 hectares. That's a village in Burgundy. This whole area is slightly larger than that. It's like 1.5 times. So why we don't see a lot of it, but similar grapes, and then just divided in these regions, Bon Viard, Côte de l'Aurore, and Vuilly. The French AOC classification, anything like Burgundy classification too, they're trying to, I'm surprised, they're trying to, Jeff. I was looking at it like I wanted to even review that a little bit stronger in the compendium too, but they're trying to, like they do have that Grand Cru system and they have something that's called the OIC, but then it changes from, the OIC changes from each major speaking region. Like what the Italian speaking regions have its own regulations, the French OIC or the French speaking regions have its own regulations, as does the Germany, but it doesn't follow anything like the Predicat system. And it's because this isn't part of the EU for a long time. It was just kind of whatever like the local growers decide upon. Only lately, since like the 1980s, have they developed a system. The major areas, Valle and Vaud, yes, it sounds like something similar to like going into like regional, slowly graduating up to, they do have premier crus and then our two official recognized grand crus. So yeah, me walking through that. So yeah, similar. We were talking with the winemakers over there too, and it's like we were hearing a different story from what we'd read about, but whatever that conversation was, I couldn't quite remember off the top of my head right now. But yeah, there's Grand Crus, Premier Crus, and then just regional wines. Valet, our our tan, our beige area. 1/3 of the nation's annual output, why it's the most important. And then again, northern side of the Rhone River or along those banks. Protected by the Alps, country's driest wine growing region. Dry region in general too. When you look at, they say it gets about 1/3 of the humidity or moisture that Bordeaux does. Bordeaux, right in the southwestern part of France, a rather humid area where they also see a lot of botrytis and you have to have those concerns. But here it's relatively dry. They used to also have these things called BISS. It's like BISSES. There are these drainage channels, essentially directing the flow of melted water from the Alps to irrigate these vineyards. And those have been developed in the Middle Ages. I don't know, and I don't know if it's widely practiced today, but it was something that's taken place a long time. But they do develop a lot of places, it seems like, have to depend on a certain way of irrigation for how dry this area can be. You do see a diversity of soils, and then we do have this influence of this fawn wind, which is rather warm and dry. And they see that even a little bit of Alsace. I don't come across, you don't read about that too often, but this fawn wind, that's just nice and warm and dry. known locally, as it does take a few different names. Chasselas, if you ever hear someone talking about fondant, it is simply this Chasselas. I still saw people just saying Chasselas, but fondant is the local name for it. And then this is cool, Dole. Um, Surprise Chablis producers haven't complained about Chablis. Yeah, maybe. Dole. So it's a wine style that is a minimum of 80%, 85% combined of Pinot Noir and Gamay. Yum, delicious for your light-bodied, soft, easy drinking reds. Maybe on a summer day you could put a chill to it, but you'll come across this pretty regularly. Or Dole, and then this is something you'll read about, this Vin de Glacier made from these res grapes. And supposedly just right above, I think it was Sierre, where this is commonly takes place. But it's a maderized wine. Think about like Madeira, where the wines are actually cooked or almost exposed to heat. They're maderized. And then they're stored in high altitude celeras. So like cooked wines like Madeira, stored like celeras, like sherries, but aged and raised at high altitude. But when you're there, and I've read that through this at Guildsom, and some other source was talking about it today, if it was even like the things that you have to try to find is like Wine Searcher or even with Wikipedia, they talked about this as too. But when you're going there and you're asking them and you're talking about it, a lot of these winemakers were scratching their head. We didn't find one person that actually understood what Vin de Glacier was, but supposedly it exists. And what is it? If you happen to come across it, it's this kind of cool, unique style of wine made from the res grape. And then this is Amine de Vitraz. Besides Chasselas, cool, crisp, bright whites, wonderful Dole made from Pinot Noir and Gamay, um, are never to be found in Vin de Glacier. We do have sweet wines that developed. Here, they don't call it the Pradicat system or anything along those lines, like Cabinet, Spätlese, Auslese, Beerenauslese, things that you'd see in like Germany and Austria. Here, they just have 1B, 2Bs, or 3Bs. And the more bees you have, the sweeter it is, the more honey-like flavors. It's not so bad. Here, it'd just be like less than 8 grams of sugar. Usually we start to perceive sweetness at about 6, so it's still relatively dry, to about 9 to 25 grams per liter. So something like maybe like Cabinet, Spätlese, but bordering and off dry. And then 3Bs, this would essentially be the top quality, probably the most expensive, where it'd be 25 grams per liter of residual sugar or above. This is standing in Valle, in some of the vineyard sites. This is at Cave Clos. Just to get an idea, like the Rhone River would be right down over here on the western side, to kind of see what it looked like to stand here. In Vitras, where this Amine grape is being grown. And then this is one of the ladies that we had met, rather young lady. She was just recently, I just received an email where they highlighted her again through Neil Rosenthal. Rosenthal is an importer that does a lot to focus on the wines of Switzerland, probably more than any other importer that I could think of. He would probably be one of the most prolific, Rosenthal. So if you want to dig deep into this and just discover more of these producers, maybe you look towards the Rosenthal site first. Look at this. Okay, so this is this young lady. This is their garage, where you can't see it, but behind them was like their old wine. It was their wine press. It was their destemmer that was back there, just tucked away in their garage by their car. And then you walk through their door and you go down to their basement, which is probably as small, not much bigger than my bedroom. And then that's where you have your wine tasting, this Cendrine. And then you can see even a friend Liz here, they even have some of these pulleys that it's almost like it's not like a roller coaster ride, but something like a fair ride, right? And you see that in Germany too, how this is how they have to ride up and down the hillsides because it can be rather steep sometimes. That helps them pick their grapes. But this looks, it'd be kind of a scary thing to actually hop on. I've never seen one in action, but it doesn't seem like the most stable thing to be riding up and down those vineyard sites. This Cave Clos. This is I thought this was one of her bottlings here too, which it is. This is her cornelin, and that's the name of the varietal. So something much different than Pinot Noir and Gamay. This is where I'm not going to walk through all of these, but this is where I thought it'd be kind of cool to see what they chose to pour us. Out of all these producers, as a wine related event, this is what was highlighted for us. It's already pretty carefully selected. And I can't imagine they get too many people from the US visiting. I mean, like as far as like what the search of like wine education. So to see what they were offering. So Petit Arvin, you could see it in a dry style. They don't always make sweet examples like the Amine de Tras, right? This Johannesburg, which is Sylvaner, could be like a Sauvignon Blanc alternative. This is kind of cool, Payan. If you do like even like the Jura wines, it's simply Sauvignon, but it's another name for it, Payan, which could be like a nutty oxidative white sometimes. We tried a Chasselas, again, also known as Fendant. We tried a couple of Pinot Noirs, and then if it's not cornelin, this purple, it does start to resemble what a Syrah would be, almost smoky, savory, meaty, with that likely darker hue to it. And Humaine Rouge, I remember this one maybe being a little bit lighter than what we saw with cornelin. Another producer, we have one major retail store in the city here in New York. One is Astor's, and it's carefully selective in what they have on their shelves. But if you're ever in search of something, it's still large enough where they probably have some of these things, like hard to find stuff. Well, Serge Rowe is not only one of those. I mean, they had Cave Clos there. They have Serge Rowe there. Here you can see he just redesigned their labels, trying to be more modern. But we like their older stuff, to be honest with you here. But again, you can see we're trying like a Petit Arvin. Here we have Humaine Blanc, which is kind of interesting. Try a couple of Mine de Vitras, and again, how do they determine sweetness levels? By the number of B's on the label. Dole, which is your Pinot Noir and Gamay. Cornelin, maybe like a Syrah. And then here we had one of their top bottlings, Amine Grind Nobel, were up to much, much higher than 25 grams. 90 we're getting to be pretty sweet. This is one of our the third visit that we had, Cave du Vieux Moulin. And as you can see, you're almost in like this underground basement where you're doing your barrel tastings, and then a mix of Hermitage sneaks its head in, Marsanne. So if you like your whites of the Rhone, absolutely. And again, reminding ourselves, Païen is Sauvignon. Snuck in another Mine de Vitras, Carmen Noir. This is interesting. Never seen this anywhere else before, but a Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon crossing. Cornelin again, like Syrah. I don't mind that review. And then another bottling of like Marsanne. And then if you're in that area, a wonderful cheese that you can discover is this Etivaz. So up higher in the hillsides, they have a lot of wild flowers is growing all over the place. And that's what a lot of these cows they'll eat when they're out there in the grass. So they have these not only this wonderful cheese unique to this area, they have these it's like twice a year these street parades where they give them these huge headdresses that represent these wildflowers that grow in the area, and then they just walk them down, and they have these kind of parades twice a year. Very, very floral cheese too, from what the cows eat. That Etivaz right along there. So now if we go from Valle and we head over to the Vaud, we're just on the northern side of Lake Geneva, bordering the Jura region. Again, also, this is all Chasselas. Here, instead of Fondant, it might take the name as Dorine. So Dorine over here, Fondant over here. And then we mentioned our 6 regional AOCs. These are our regional levels. of a Chablais, right? We're just kind of working backwards. La Côte on the far side, the one where all the action is happening is in Laval. And then if we go up to the north, near Neuchâtel, we have Bonvier, Côte de l'Orbe, and Bouilly. Approved villages may be listed on the label. That's where we're talking about a similarity in the Burgundian way of regulating things. And then we mentioned our two Grand Crus, Désolé and Calaman, but remember Epes, remember these, and Dorin, which is simply, I don't know why I list, that's probably just a hiccup here, but we just know that this is Chasselas, but again, highlighting these major grapes. And then Sauvignon, this is interesting. This is actually a hiccup, you guys. I got to go double check this. Gamay, this is a blend similar to Dole, but let me double check that before I get ahead of myself. I was supposed to fix this real quick. This blend of Gamay and Pinot Noir with a different name known as Sauvignon, local to this region. And then Geneva, sneaking down over here. We're not gonna stop just here at the Valle. Again, I have some pictures and producers. Um, this is a picture that was taken down near there. But some of the most densest plantings, number 3, past Valle and Vaud, as far as the level of production. Chasselas and Gamay dominate. Similar varietals, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. So remember this now. So this is Désolé and Epes. Calaman would have been like right in between our other Grand Cru, tucked away on the hillside. But we can see Saint Saffron right over here. And this is the picture then. So again, you can kind of see these steep terrace slopes. I like this picture. This is our friend Diane. But you can see how clear that water looks. This doesn't really reflect that, right? It's not like you could, I mean, like you can almost, seems like it's like almost like Cancun or something like that, where you can almost see towards the bottom. So what we did when we visited the VOD, they would really have us taste like, they would be highlighting these hillsides in their bottlings to reflect either the whites or the reds that are grown from these crews. One of the producers that we went with, he's actually called the King of Chasselas. They wrote about him like that in a local publication, this Pierre-Luc Levraz. But we went, this is fun, where you taste a series of different Chasselas or vertical. And then this is a thing that could, I mean, again, if you're able to taste Chasselas, that's already one thing, is like a refreshing white, but because it's bright and it has that acidity, you always have that possibility for ageability too, just even with like a white Burgundy or potentially even like a aged Riesling. So that would be a really fun thing to discover, is something that might have 10 years or more behind it, where it gets to be golden in color and almost these richer, like nutty, almost dried fruit qualities to it. But a fun thing that we were able to, kind of a rare thing that we were able to do with our King of Chasselas. We did this vertical. You can see again, just the small, I mean, this is his place. You're just knocking on the door. I think we actually hopped in the car and we drove on to his cellar, but again, very small. It's not like you're hanging out in this huge Napa tasting room or anything along those lines. Pierre-Luc Levraz. And then this is the picture that was taken or really when there was a picture that was taken that was released in that local publication that gave him that designation. So we now have met the King of Chasselas. We're going Chasselas crazy, and we know who's the main guy behind it all. Luc Macy, another gentleman over here, and then this is where we got to see like the differences of a Pes and Désolé, where they're just, I think what's important is that they were actually highlighting these areas in their bottlings. They consider these two areas unique enough where they have different expressions in the wines that they drink, between a Pes and Désolé, and even highlighting Gamay in one of their bottlings. Super, super old bottle. This is me with a goofy face and facial expression. Louis Bouvard. So Luc Macy, another one. Louis Bouvard, kind of our third visit. I love these old labels. It reminds you of like German wine labels or something along those lines. Quite different. Remember how Serge Rowe of Valle had that almost gold black label? Or like, I think a lot of us, not to give Serge any guff, but I think a lot of us are kind of charmed by these older examples. And again, just again, chasselas, also maybe known as Doran, but not many people were practicing that. And then seeing these different areas. Here we had one from Chablais, which is kind of unique in the far eastern parts, coming from where else. And then here they also played around with Chenin, unique. So we've had our Fendant and we've had our Doran, right? But it's all just chasselas. So we've had our sweet wines from Vitraz, based off of the Mean grape. We've had Dole, which is a blend of Pinot Noir and Gamay, right? We tried Cornelin, and we come over here, we've enjoyed more Gamay, and now we're crossing over the border, and then we're in Savoie. But look at this, you guys. Right across the lake is still Savoie in the northern parts. Remember this. Well, actually, you don't even have to remember this. So Savoie is, it's broken down and it has these crews or these villages within this larger region. And some of them, like it looks like a lot, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, what are the differences between Apremont and Les Abymes and Chatonnet or Marine or Crepy or Marine? Well, up over here in the north by Switzerland, these are all based off of chasselas, Crepy, Marignan, and Marine, and even Rapale. So just not so bad. Up here is when you'll see this focus on chasselas. If you're ever in Alsace, it takes the name Gutedel, chasselas. And we're talking about how it takes many different names. But here we have two bodies of two lakes that define this area. If it's not just Lake Léman, when that's the name taken in France. We are also down here in Bourget, towards the south. But again, a continental climate as we're further inland. It's not like we're hanging out along the Mediterranean. So, you know, healthy winters, spring and fall, and warm summers. The main grape here, there's a couple of them, but the most widely planted is Jacquard. Jacquard. It's probably not even too far off from Chasselas. Apple, pear, tree fruit, nice and dry, crisp and refreshing because this is a cool area and relatively lighter in body. It's like if you want, if you grew up drinking Pinot Grigio and you just want something simple and refreshing, you're probably gonna like Jacquard. Like if I guess that down, I want something racy and bright and like easy drinking and light. I could pour him a Jacquard and probably get away with it. I think if I were to try to build upon that, I would say sometimes it does get to take on a slightly nutty quality, similar to like a Chenin would be, but maybe not quite as powerful. Like a nutty, easy drinking Chenin, Jacquard. Altes, also known as Roussette, and then Roussanne. Really coming from down here in Chinon, the town of Bergeron. But if you see Bergeron, it's Roussanne. Hey, guys. Northern Rhone, Jura. I would say it's higher elevation than what you'd see. It's higher elevation than what you see in Burgundy and Rhone. And that's because of your proximity to the Alps. And that's always great with hot temperatures, ripeness of fruit, high elevations, preserved acidity. I just checked on the chat. Review time. What is Marsanne known as in Switzerland? Hermitage. Comes from Hermitage. Here, Roussanne is known as Bergeron. Gamay Mondeuse. Oh, here. Yeah, this is where we are talking about Mondeuse earlier, right, with Rachel. When you get down here a little bit further south, and it makes sense, moving south might be getting to be a little bit warmer. This is your like smoky, spicy Gamay or light Syrah comparison, Mondeuse. Again, like if you like these light peppery reds, which I always throw out in spades, Mondeuse is the varietal for you. But again, yeah, again, if you're out in Beaujolais, Gamay, just cross over here and drink some Gamay. Mondeuse, Pinot Noir. This is unique, Persan. You've only seen a few producers actually planning and focusing on this varietal that has almost once gone extinct. Not much of this is planted. It'd be interesting to see if someone looked up the percentage of the amount of Persan that is actually planted right now. I'd be curious to see if anybody did that. I'm sure it's like, if there's like 200 hectares, that would be a lot. We had this producer, Nicholas Gonin, that was his name, that was had to like go through old archives of varietal to discover what was some of these grapes that were planted in these areas, to discover that what he had was actually Persan. Anyway, unique. If we try to break this down into our AOP system, because that's what we have in France, again, the large area where you can do the most with as far as like a winemaker would be Vin de Savoie, and that's as if the grapes could be coming anywhere in this region. And then that's where you have just a range of styles from white and rosé and red and sparkling, where you can do quite a bit, and with many different varietals. It's not just tied to either Altes or Roussanne. Um, this is kind of your blanket appellation. We have a couple appellations that are based off of Rousset. Rousset is also known, or AKA, Altes. Altes and Rousset is the same thing, but it has to be this varietal. So you have a Vin de Savoie, like a blanket appellation where you can release many different styles. Could be coming from any of these areas within this larger region. And then we have Rousset de Savoie, or it's white wines based off of this varietal. Seyssel is the one single village appellation in all of Savoie, it's also dedicated to white wines, Seyssel. And then west of Bourget, we have this region of Bougie. Bougie, kind of the general appellation. Rousset, again, also known as Altes, similar to what we saw in Savoie. So this is us trying to break down these many different like crews within. You say there's 3 major areas of production. I'm going to share this wonderful article by Charles Neal, who kind of runs through these areas as well, but some of this information kind of referenced that article. The Haute Savoie, towards the north, or Lake Lemont, again, we have our cruise. And not looking at the screen, I can't really block it, but what's the grape of Crepy, Marignan, and Rapel? What is it? Is it Fendant? Yeah, it could be. It's known as Chasselas, though, right? Chasselas, that's right. Fendant would be Valle, but not so bad. Yeah, I forget where what me and blah blah blah. Well, that producer was right up over here in Marina or Rapel, where that one producer was blocking all of his mellow. But again, you're like driving through these winding roads, and then he has like maybe a hectare or two, which would be like a soccer field at most, of a vineyard dedicated to Chasselas. Yeah. God, I was reading somewhere on this too, where Chasselas is like one of the country's most planted varietals, but a lot of it actually just went into grape juice. I didn't have a chance to double check that, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that's how I read it, and that's accurate. Anyway, just remember up here, Chasselas, this is a really unique region here as we move towards the center, but still hanging up in the north. But if we go into the center, this ice, remember this one, you guys, because you can make sparkling wines based off of this grape, Gringet. It has to be at least 15%, 50% of this varietal. We used to pour one by Corpa at Corpa's when I first started there too, made in the traditional like champagne method, but based off of this great Gringet. I don't believe there's another appellation in all of France that highlights this unique grape, Gringet, sparkling wines, ice. And then when we get into our continue, just moving west and south, for that Rousset de Savoie, based off of Altes, you can have it come from, there's 4 villages that can append their name: Frangy, Marestel, Mantoux, and Montermenard. I don't know if you're ever trying to study, it roughly follows alphabetical order, except we switch these around. Frangy, Marestel, Mantoux, and Montermenard. Late ripener, spiced honey, almond, elevated acidity, full bodied. So yeah, it's kind of like a Chenin style, or a lighter like Marsanne Roussanne, but bright and acidic. Want a dry white that's a little golden, dry white that's a little golden in color, with a little spice. This could be for you. Rousset. Seyssel, just right north of Bougie, our red area here on the map, or Lake Bourget is what I mean to say. again, dedicated to Altes for the most part. If you see Seychelles on the label, it will be Altes. However, you can actually put Molette, which is the grape, and have it varietally labeled that way. But they would let you know because it would be labeled as that grape. And the difference here is you can actually make a dry or an off-dry style from Seychelles, and you can make sparkling wines based off Altes, but you can blend a little bit of this Molette and Chasselas, our favorite. When we continue to move just a little bit further south, Jacquer, Gamay, and other reds start to show up when we get into Chaton. And then Chambéry to the south, Vermouth, right? Chambéry. You can find some wonderful vermouths and where they're coming from. I like this. When we get into Apremont, we see a slightly smokier styles of Jacquer, a beam, fruitier. So that'd be kind of few and far between if you were to see these labeled with the specific Apremont or a beam cru. But you know, if you'd probably be enjoying Jacquer, Apremont would be slightly smokier, a beams would be slightly fruitier. And then we have Comte de Savoie. We find Chenin Bergeron, and it's on there. You guys, if you're drinking a Bergeron, what's the grape? You have your answer. Roussanne. And it makes sense. Not only getting into reds, being slightly warmer, we're getting into whites that drink with a little added texture and a little added richness, like Roussanne. And I would generalize that without too much BS, that Roussanne and Marsanne, they're going to drink fuller than most of your Jacquer and most of your Altes. And where does our spicy red? You guys, you're probably going to have a tough time finding your Pinot Noirs or your Gamays or your Doles from Switzerland, but you should be able to find a Mondeuse. So check those out. If there's a red to remember from tonight's class, Mondeuse from Savoie, and then it could be kind of fun. And I've seen these on labels, Saint Jean de la Porte or Arbine, but hensely it's a slightly more specific area where this Mondeuse varietal can grow well. This is standing in the vineyards of Chenin. You can see like just even some of this old like medieval history that can characterize even the middle of your vineyard sites, you know, and remembering our monastic rule that took place over hundreds of years ago. Bougie. So yeah, I always like to review, and I know I've said it a lot, but just when you're looking at this area that it can almost be head spinning in these multiple different villages, just north. Chasselas, cool. Here's another review time. Chat, fans. Ice is based off of what grape? Minimum 50%. Who's gonna be it? Who's gonna do it? You know, if you want like a Cremantageur or any other things, this could be a wonderful thing to discover. Yeah, it does. Gringet. And then we focus on Rosette and Altes, getting fuller into styles as we move south. And then like things like Roussanne and Mondeuse and other reds down towards the bottom. And then Bougie, again, kind of that range in styles, Blanc, Rosé, and Rouge, more into neighboring like Burgundian influence or like Chardonnay and Gamay playing the major roles. They have areas within Bougie, Manicol and Montagny that are specific to particular grapes. Like if you see Bougie Manicol, it has to be either Chardonnay or Pinot Noir for white or red. If you happen to see Montagny, it has to be Mondeuse. But this is all over here on the western part of Bourget. And then, oh, you guys, you want an addicting wine? I don't know if you like sweet or not, but this could be amazing. Bougie Cerdon. It's a method ancestral style of sparkling that has a lighter effervescence, and it's usually made sweet, and it's based off of Gamay and Pulsard. And it's usually at a lower alcohol level. This is like the wonderful like brunch wine for like waffles and pancakes. It's a wonderful cheese wine where you get a little bit of sweet and salty, even like a fruit parfait, because it's not like fortified or like has high levels of alcohol, and it's still like light and still rather refreshing because it is effervescent. why it could even grow great for like even just like well, I said cheese already and stuff too, but these could be crazy addicting. Bougie, but it'd have to be labeled Cerdon, and then it's method ancestral, lightly effervescent with a touch of sweetness based off of Gamay and Pulsard. If you guys have tried these before, there's a producer, Renardart Fache. Renardart Fache, it's like a black label. That's one that is more common. There's another producer, Domaine de la Dentelle, Dentelle. It's the only producer to use a majority of Pulsard for all you Jura lovers out there. That even drinks lighter than Gamay, and it's just really pretty. Bougie Cerdon. And then there's Rosetta Bougie. Again, not too far off from our Rosetta Savoie. This is what a wine tasting looks like when you go to Savoie. This is Louis Magnan. Look at this. This is their tasting room. They have actually, when you step outside of their tasting room, they have quite a few large steel tanks sitting outside as being, again, one of the more prominent producers of this area, but this is still small, like low key production, right? So here she's going, what's her name? I'll remember in a second, but she's cutting us off all these cheeses. So it's just like this huge plated cheese that none of us are even going to be coming close to finishing, but that's not the first time that's happened in areas like this. It's all over, but it looks like, I mean, I'm from Minnesota, and I feel like I was sitting in my grandma's like living room with tasting wines with one of the most again influential winemakers from these areas. But Beatrice is her name. Beatrice and Louis. And look at her pink outfit. Isn't that cool? She's rocking the pink denim. And then Seamless, these are some of the producers. If it wasn't just Louis Magnan, that you should definitely check out. They don't have anybody to inherit their property or any children to take over. They just don't have anybody to take over the winery once they move along or pass along. So they're wondering if they'll still exist. So if you see something from Louis Magnan, again, part of the Rosenthal portfolio, check them out. This domain Ardoisier, you'll see these Instagrammed again, base, just like a nutty, bright, dry white that's super, super delicious. I forget if this is actually Altace or Jacquer. I think it's Jacquer. This is Jacquer. This Domaine de Côte de Russe, La Pente. But it's just cool stuff that you'll see at like some of the, like, I don't want to say hip wine bars, but kind of things that will focus oftentimes on more natural or more reserved, more terroir driven, non-influential wines, yeah, non-manipulated, or you know what I'm saying, low intervention wines. This is Giacchino. It's a mix of Gamay and Mondeus for like a light spicy red. And then this isn't Bougie Cerdon, but this is Tissot. It just looks like a wonderful bistro wine. All of these are wonderful bistro wines, where he makes a sparkling method traditional rosé. So it's not ancestral, so you know that it's not also Bougie Cerdon, it's traditional method. And Val d'Aosta. So we started over here in Switzerland. We ran over here to Savoie, and now we're heading over to Italy. So Ticino would be over here, our French-speaking canton. And what's the major grape of Ticino? From the beginning of class, Merlot. That's right. Val d'Aosta. Here we go. So we're tucked up in high elevations again within the Alps, landlocked area. Savoie only became a part of France too, because it was part of the Kingdom of Savoie in 1860, right? And then like you just forget how these, or I do, how these countries were all formed and when they became a part of these nowadays territories. But anyway, they speak French here too, as opposed to Italian, or it's pretty common for them to speak French in this area, is probably a better way of saying it. But very, very rural, much different than if you went into like Milan and like neighboring Lombardy. Again, similar climates. And then where does grape growing exist in these rather cool areas? By some sort of moderating influence for us here. So it's not like Geneva or Bourget or two major lakes of Savoie. Here in Val d'Aosta, right on the Dora Baltea. It's like a little valley area. between these hillsides. And then it's one DOC, but within this DOC, it's like an AOP of France, controlled denomination of origin. But we have 7 subregions, and we're going to know them all. If you want to try to summarize it, the ones in the middle, which what we have here, moving from Enfer to Avier in our pencil, our colored pencil map, these are all based off of Petit Rouge. Just remember in the center, it's Petit Rouge. Enfer to Avier, we move on Tourette, the big purple. We're gonna skip by Neus and have Chambav, but these would all be based off of Petit Rouge. It almost sounds like it could be Pinot Noir, but it's not. It's its own thing. It's a little bit fuller, but rarely ever bigger than medium body because still this is a relatively cool area. And there's always like a savory edge to it too. If it's like Cab Franc herbs or Syrah spice, it's usually something savory along with this kind of light to dark fruit and relatively soft tannins. Really, really cool stuff. Petit Rouge from these middle regions. And for Davier, Tourette, and then Chambav. Pico Tendro, or when I wrote in the invite tonight, Pico Tenur, which is simply Nebbiolo, because we're right across the border of Piedmont. And if you love Piedmont, you might even know about these Alto Piemonte areas to the north, where you get light, fresh, kind of like more aromatic styles of Nebbiolo that don't necessarily require the aging that somewhere like Barolo or Barbaresco would necessarily require. Similar to what you'd see up over here in Arnaud, Montjovet, and Danas. So on the far southeastern parts along the Dora Belteo River, we have a couple of subregions based off of Nebbiolo, which is Pico Tenur, also known as Pico Tenur. And then on the far western side, this is near La Salle, we have Blancmore Gex, which the grape is just known as Prier. And they can make sparkling wine over here that's crisp and bright. I had a wonderful example. I almost think if you like whites from Alto Adige, really, really pretty. It's like that acidity from elevation gives these wines like an aromatic lift. That's what I'm keep talking about. And this Prier Blanc that we had as a still white was just been absolutely delicious. I'll show you a picture in a second. But remember when we refined our Petit Arvin, right, over in Switzerland? Gamay, Petit Rouge, Fumin, these can all be varietally labeled. So if it's not by region, like sub-region, it can just be labeled by varietal. So you make your life a little bit easier that way. These are some of the producers. This is that Prier Blanc. Blanc de Margex at de La Salle is just simply Prier Blanc. Look at these labels. Isn't this awesome? Another producer that I've seen around on many wine stores based off Prier Blanc. I've actually enjoyed a bottle of this when I had a lunch at Del Posto in Fardarvier. Here you guys go. I have a hard stop at 1/2 past. All right, have a good one. Thanks, Jeff. Oh, you already had to leave. But hey, review time, you guys. What the heck is the grape of Enfer d'Avier in the center area? Petit Rouge. That's right. So you would know, see, it's really goofy and how it's written here. But you know from class that Enfer d'Avier from the center area, it has to be based off of Petit Rouge. It's minimum 85%. As with Tourette, a little bit lower percentage here, only 70%. And when we move to the eastern parts, bordering Piedmont, it does say Cuva producer that we've had, Arnaud, which would be Arnaud Montjovet. Does anybody remember the grape of Arnaud Montjovet? Nebbiolo. Nebbiolo, so you know that this would be Nebbiolo. And then we love this producer, Elio Aton, too, reminding ourselves that they can just varietal label. That's what we see here. It's not subregion, but actual varietal Fumin, which could be like a Petit Arvin. And we're not done there. Keep you 5 minutes later, but a chance to remind ourselves of all the foods that you'd probably get to try if you were there. Have some fondue, a lot of your melted cheese, right? Have some polenta. Look at this, pan fried and buttered, and accompaniment to sausages or stews. This deal at sausages. Oh, have some ground pork with a little nutmeg seasoning, and then cook it with some wine. Saw some frog legs. We had a lot of this here too when we had one dined at a local restaurant. These perch fillets, just like little line, not like fish and chips, but with smaller fish, but kind of along those lines. Tart fillet, like a casserole. Comte Saint Antoine. Oh, wonderful, like semi-hard cheese here from Eastern France. Beaufort, similar to Gruyere, oftentimes used in Savoie, and then our Tom de Savoie, partially skimmed cow's milk. Lots of cheeses, right? Also protected by French AOCs, Tom de Bauge, like a sweeter style of cheese. Look at it, it's just all cheese from here on out. Morbier, Reblochon, on and on and on. All right. Well, I know I repeated myself quite a bit there too, but I thought that's not so bad when we're going into these areas that aren't as regularly explored, just so you can kind of, have those takeaways when we're sometimes flooded with a lot of information in these wine classes. But hopefully, we remember some of those things, right? Val d'Aosta, the middle areas, if it's Amphardavie, Tourette or Chambave, it's based on Petit Rouge. You guys, what do we find on? You guys, if you have to get going, I understand. I was just like, oh, what do we find in for Arnaud, Montjovet, and Danas? Simply Nebbiolo. I'll send some slides. If you want to ask a question, I'm here. Drink some Mondeus. If you want a refreshing white and something different than Chablis, check out some Chasselas. And
I have a question.
yeah.
What do you see like because Swiss wines, they're similar to a lot of these that are just over the border and kind of high elevation, cooler climates, but just the way their economy is means they're more expensive. What do you see as like how do they break in more? Like does it like I've tried some Gamay and Pinots from Switzerland, and it's really hard to justify the price compared to
Yeah.
a Gamay from Beaujolais or a Pinot from Burgundy. Um,
Do you remember what you paid for those? Because you talked about price right away. I know
yeah,
that it's
so
expensive, right? Like,
yeah, it's expensive. I actually import into California, so we were buying directly from the winery, but um, they're like starting at like 12 euros from the winery versus like four for
whoa.
what you'd see in France, and not euros, Swiss francs. So they hit you a little more there. Um, and it just seems like do we need to like does it need to be like some of these more unique grape varietals or like
Where
how
does
does
it break its mold? Yeah, man. Like, gosh, what did I even have? Like, I think we actually had a cornelin as a red, but we had to charge like 110, $120, and we weren't making that great of cost percentages on it. Just to try to introduce people to like this unique red that might drink like a Syrah, and it was good, but it was like you could get better Syrah from Northern Rhone at that price, even though that's cool and it's something that you'd like to talk about. It's a struggle. I don't have the answer, but that was a huge part of conversation because we were over there and I wasn't a buyer at the time, but I was just like, oh, cool. We're discovering all these wines and meeting these awesome people. And like, let's get some for our list. And then you look at like what it would take to purchase some of these and offer some of them. And you're just like, we're going nowhere really quick. So I don't know. That's kind of up to them if they want to start, like putting a competitive edge against themselves, like to make these wines to, you know, to
yeah,
be able
yeah,
to offer these wines.
like
Because
you said, they don't need to, right?
yeah,
Like
it
have the
doesn't seem
domestic
like it's something
market.
it's not something it's not that they're driving to do. Um, yeah, so I wish I had an answer for you because it's not like production costs could be that much higher,
Mhm.
you know, for some of these, like making it in your garage, other than there's limited, like low production, you know, like, so I don't know. Yeah, but that's definitely one of the challenges. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, like I've had petite RVing that I really like. But even that is like you're going a couple steps up from like the really common chasselas or something, and then that's even above like that basic level. It's a little bit more expensive. You start to get something interesting, but there's always going to be something, you know, I don't know if it's you need to go like premium and unique, or um, it just seems like there's interesting stuff out there. And I
Yeah,
don't know
I
what the
know.
solution is to like getting people excited about it.
And even the premium stuff, it's not necessarily the focus. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It's not even, I think, what Brest represents a lot of these people, which even if you're trying to, you know, have that as like the way that you could promote it on this side, I don't think it's what would best represent that area, or what you'd really want to like, no, this is what makes it cool, you know, like it's actually just the things like a Gamay Pinot blend, or, you know, like
Hmm.
that, or a Chasselas, or just like a, you know, it's not the things that you'd want people to become familiar with first. So
Yeah,
I know it's goofy.
it's just unfortunate the economics there, but at least there is this stuff like Savoie and Val that's
Yeah,
fairly similar.
I've never actually tried a shot. I don't think I've tried a Chasselas. I mean, besides actually going there and visiting, I don't remember ever seeing one like a Savoie Chasselas at like a
Uh-huh.
retail store, or, you know, like I don't, or I've never had a distributor bring one to me, you know, like
Yeah.
there's a couple examples. I mean, I have tried. There are a few that are floating around there that aren't. Don't let us totally lead you astray, you guys. For those that are hanging out last minute, like there are Chasselas that are affordable, but they're just La Colombe Fesh, I believe was the name of one of the producers that we had on our list a while ago, and that was like, you know, we could pour that by the glass for like $17 or so, you know, like it's not all out there. But it's just it's a more difficult find.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's like I don't think, besides just visiting there, like I don't think I've ever had a chance to try a chow sauce from Savoie, which might be a something at a more affordable price point too, if you're, you know, like maybe to come across it. But now
Yeah.
there we have import fees
Not from
related to those
Switzerland
stuff
though.
too. So go figure.
Not from Switzerland or Italy.
What's that?
Not from Switzerland or Italy.
No, not, yeah, but
Well,
at lower alcohol wines. So
thanks.
oh, well, all right. Yeah, that's cool that you import over in California. That's awesome that you've had to run through those. I've never run through those. You've had to go through that process. That's interesting.
Yeah, we know some Swiss people and they try to send us wine and it's just like this just doesn't that doesn't fit into which is you just couldn't sell it for that price. So I was curious to come and see what your take was on it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm glad I was able to. I hope that was kind of fun for you guys to see like who we met with, and like kind of what they were pouring for us. Like I I wasn't really gonna do that at first, but then I was like, well, actually, this is kind of cool because you're not gonna really see that unless you go visit. So hopefully that was kind of fun for you guys too. All right. So let you get going. Good night. I don't know. You can keep me here if you want, man. But I think we'll let everybody get going. But I really appreciate the conversation and the interest. And thanks so much, you guys. We'll send an outline, and you can always keep the conversation going from there if you ever wanted to. So
Yeah, no, thanks.
much appreciated. It's cool to see people signing up for Switzerland class. We tried awesome things, and we know they're out there. Now it's just how do we get it? All
Is
right.
this the typical size of these classes?
You know, like it's gone in waves a little bit. Like when we first started, it was much more obviously like with all this. but then I think people weather got nice and people were tired of sitting inside on Zoom. So then it was
Mhm.
people that were just studying more regularly, and then you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But we've seen numbers kind of pick up again, and I think with like our tour of France, it's been happening in more general classes, and that's how it can usually be when we have public classes. Um, that we're seeing an increase in registrations, like getting into like 20 and 30 again, but it just can kind of depend. I think we got to promote them a little bit more. We haven't done much to like we haven't done anything to promote these really other than but it's fun for us to do these more specific like um it's just fun for us to dive into these regions and spend time with it and remind ourselves what's going on and give it that little bit of attention, you know.
Yeah, yeah, you can read like the Atlas of Wine, but it's cool seeing the pictures and kind of what your experiences were checking
Yeah,
out the different places.
yeah, my one of the guys that was with us is like Ryan, and that's I don't think this, but he's like, well, you probably know more about Switzerland wine now after this trip than probably 99%. Like, well, maybe I don't know, just because none of us are exposed to it. Yeah, I didn't. One of the score I forgot to read through the. I didn't get time to go scroll through the atlas with Switzerland on this one, but you know, you try to cover all those corners just to see what people are writing about and what they're because there's always something in every little.
Mhm.
Anyway.
Hey Ryan, speaking of classes, what's next after the Tour of France? I noticed you didn't put anything else on the schedule yet.
Oh, she put. Yeah, we're trying to. Um, she's um we've got January set aside. We're breaking it down to just 2 classes a week in January. Amber wanted to do another island hopping one as like a winter getaway class as one of our first ones. And then we're doing like a Bordeaux. We're doing a couple major regional focuses. But I think we're trying to give ourselves a little bit of like I mean now it's just a few of us like we've been going pretty strong here for a while. Or I think we want to kind of give ourselves a chance to refocus. Like that World of Wine series, it's always like, oh, this is cool, you know, a progressive thing, but it takes a lot for us to keep up with. So I think we're, Venkat, if you want to send me an email or remind me, I'll give you the list of what we had outlined for January, just to give you a heads up. But I think we
Sure,
want to kind of
definitely.
like, oh, what do we want to do again where we can be excited about? You know what I'm saying? Like we want to like it's not just running through the just moving
Yeah,
through
no,
the
that's fair.
motions.
I absolutely love that World of Wine tour
Oh,
because it
that's
was a
good.
great,
Man, like
yeah,
we
it
just
was a great way to sort of approach it because you focused in on the right topics and it was a good overview. I mean, I like your regional profiles in the other classes too, but it was nice to just go from top to bottom through the most important regions.
what he's talking about, we did like a series, like a progressive series, because people are kind of asking for it too. And we kind of do that even for ourselves and like staff training in the fall time. But we wanted to have like quizzes and fun interactive things like that so people could look at that stuff on their own review. But it's like, oh, I feel like we're always just like, oh yeah, we gotta get this done, or you know, like we're always, and we just don't want anything to be half-assed. So it's like it'd be fun to have like more interviews with like winemakers and people like you know, it'd be fun to do some more things like that. But so I think we want to like give ourselves a time to like, well, what can we do that something really cool, like something cool that everybody's really interested in again. So okay, I'm super happy that you found those rewarding because you're totally the person or group of people who we try to do these things for. But we're always like, oh, I hope that was good, you know. All right.
Yeah, it seems like Zoom, there might be opportunity like to bring in people, like you can bring somebody in from anywhere, right?
Totally. Dude,
Like,
when we got started, we were like having interviews with like Alvaro Espinosa. All right, did I say his name right? Oh my gosh, am I butchering his name? Alvaro Espinosa of like Chile, like one of the pioneers in biodynamics, and you're just like jumping on the call. I mean, you guys see that. You can have interview. You can. It's almost again where it's oversaturated, but it's just like that's
mhm.
cool as hell. We're having like interviews with Mimi Castile, one of like the leaders of what are they? of winemaking out in Oregon, rejuvenate. I always butcher that, rejuvenating farming. But anyway, it's just like, holy cow, you're just talking like Laura Catena of like Argentina. You're just talking to all these people, and it's just like, this is amazing. This is what you'd want to do on your own time. Let alone, I mean, that's who we learn from. So it's like you get to introduce so many other people to these. These people are literally the leaders in their countries. You know, like you just get to hear from them, the source.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check those out.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. Hey, if you're interested, let me know. I can share. I wouldn't mind sharing one or two of those things. Like, anyway. I guess you wouldn't know what to ask for, but it's like anyway. All right, cool.
Johannesburg, by the way. This is
you have one? You got a Sylvaner?
That's one of ours.
Good, man.
Sierra, I think they're in Sierra. Yeah.
The far eastern part, not too far away for supposedly where Armina Fatras comes from.
Yeah, people, they don't buy this.
Or Vindiglacier.
Yeah, we were gonna go before, we were gonna do a big tour of Switzerland. We were in France right before COVID hit, and we had to rush back to America before international travel got banned, so we had to cancel it. So I haven't missed them, but it would have been cool.
See you guys, Johannesburg. It's not just made up. It's not just on a slide. You can drink it. It's in a bottle.
You can.
Of honor. All right. Cool. And then I'll share a few things. I have some cool articles that we can continue our learning.
Yeah, I think you said you were gonna send an article out.
From Charles Neal. He does one on Savoie. My friend Victoria did an article from our trip to Switzerland that was really, really great. Those are the two that come to mind right away. I don't know if I don't know. Those are the ones I'll share. I'll see if there's other fun stuff from Valle d'Aosta, but Rosenthal for all these areas. Kermit Lynch has got some good stuff from Valle d'Aosta. Anyway.
Yeah, the little short bottle I see all around the bay here. I think Kermit distributes that.
Oh, he does, yeah.
Yeah, the little short. I don't remember what it was. I think it's a white, but
it was pretty blanc. Anyway,
cool. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'll be popping into some of these.
Good night.